Good afternoon, everybody. So after the lacrimal sac and the lacrimal system, we are going to the orbit, the most commonest medical condition affecting the orbit. So my talk is going to be on thyroid-associated orbitopathy, etiopathogenesis, and classification. So this thyroid-associated ophthalmopathy, it is orbitopathy, not ophthalmopathy, is also known as Graves' orbitopathy, and it is the most common autoimmune disease of the orbit. The clinical presentation may vary from very mild disease to severe, irreversible, sight-threatening complications. Earlier, this orbitopathy was called as Graves' ophthalmopathy, thyroid ophthalmopathy, and thyroid eye disease, but these are misnomers as quoted by the authors that I have given in the reference. Why it is a misnomer? Because this thyroid orbitopathy primarily affects the orbit and the periocular soft tissues, and the eye effects are only secondary. And therefore, it is prudent to call it as orbitopathy rather than ophthalmopathy. Okay, so this TAO is a self-limiting autoimmune disease. It has an active phase, which is the inflammatory phase. And after a period of this active inflammation, there is a quiescent period which lasts for about 9 to 12 months. So it has an active phase and an inactive phase. If at all there is going to be any intervention in the surgical methods, it should be in the inactive phase. At least the eye should be quiet for about 6 to 8 months. So this TAO, it occurs in patients presenting with hyperthyroidism. We think it will be present only in patients with hyperthyroidism. No, it can also be present in patients with hypothyroidism or in euthyroidism. So this point, the PGs must have it in mind. This thyroid-related orbitopathy will not be present only in a hyperthyroid state. It can occur in patients who have been treated and when they are in the euthyroid phase. And also it is also found in patients with hypothyroid, when they are in the hypothyroid phase. That is why a treatment should not aim in patients with the hyperthyroidism, the treatment should not aim to be brought to a hypothyroid state. At least they should be maintained in the euthyroid state. So a systematic review of the world literature found that in patients with thyroid-associated orbitopathy, 10% of the patients were hypothyroid and 8 were euthyroid. Earlier studies, like we have a very good article in Indian Journal of Ophthalmology. It was published in the year 2012. In that article, actually it says, unfortunately, there were no biomarkers to detect the early onset of this disease so that, we can prepare the patient and also treat the patient like that. But a recent an article in 2024, it shows like there is a proteomic study and it has identified 3 new potential biomarkers. There are 3 potential biomarkers which are seen in the tears of the patients. And those biomarkers are cystatin C, alpha-1 anti-chymotrypsin, and retinal dehydrogenase. These biomarkers were found in the tears of patients with thyroid-associated orbitopathy that may aid in the diagnosis in future. So what is the epidemiology of the disease? Thyroid-associated orbitopathy is detectable in approximately 25% of unselected patients with Graves' disease if eyelid signs are excluded. And if the eyelid signs are included, it occurs in about 40% of patients. It certainly has a female preponderance for about 2 to 6 times more than that occurs in men. But even though it has a female preponderance, the severity of the disease is more in men than in women. And also the severity is said to be more in patients who are in the older age group. Elderly age group will have more severe disease than in patients who are younger. And it has 6.5 times, 4 times risk for development of orbitopathy. Europeans are more affected by this thyroid-associated orbitopathy than Asians. So we can have a little consolation. And also this hyperthyroidism is also found to be higher in the European population in about 42% compared to Asians, which is in 7.7%. So after this epidemiology, what are the risk factors? Certainly smoking is the greatest risk factor. And it is also one of the factors which is identified as a strongest modifiable risk factor. Like if you advise the patients to quit smoking, and certainly the severity and the onset also comes down in these patients. And also researchers have found out that orbital fibroblasts in patients who are exposed to cigarette extracts are found to be having a statistically higher levels of glycosaminoglycans and also increased adipogenesis in patients who smoke. This orbital fibroblasts, they react to this and they produce this excess amount. And that is what is the chemical that is causing all the changes in the orbit. Okay, so therefore, smoking is the highest risk factor. And also genetics play a role. HLA-B8, DR3, DQA10501 haplotypes may increase the susceptibility to the disease and the type of treatment for hypothyroidism. So what are the treatments available for hypothyroidism? There are oral drugs, and there are surgery for the thyroid gland, and also oral radioactive iodine 131 is also said to be effective in patients with hyperthyroidism because the radioactivity, it ablates the thyroid gland. But studies have found out the patients who have been exclusively on oral radioactive iodine 131 have increased risk of developing thyroid-associated orbitopathy than patients who consume oral antithyroid drugs or who undergo surgical treatment. Okay, so that is what oral radioactive iodine 131. Then thyroid stimulating hormone receptor antibody levels, if they are high, definitely they have increased risk of thyroid associated orbitopathy. Stress, any stress is going to aggravate autoimmunity, and increase age of onset, which we discussed, and the duration of Graves' hyperthyroidism. These are the risk factors. So in these patients, they not only have thyroid-associated orbitopathy, they will also have other autoimmune diseases like myasthenia gravis, Addison's disease, vitiligo, and pernicious anemia. So now my topic, what is the pathogenesis? It is hypothesized that the thyroid and the orbital tissue share a common antigen. So why should a thyroid problem affect the eye and then have so much of proptosis and chemosis and things? Because they share a common antigen. And these antigens could be thyroglobulin, thyroid stimulating hormone receptor, insulin-like growth factors, insulin growth factor 1 receptor. This is a very important receptor, or extraocular muscle antigens. Why this insulin growth factor receptor 1 is important? Because the new and the latest treatment that is available, monoclonal antibodies like, I will be telling about it. And that is very effective against this insulin growth factor receptors. So the plausible pathway for fibroblast activation in TAO is that there is orbital fibroblast, there is autoantibodies. Then autoimmunity happens and these two interact and then it activates the orbital fibroblasts. And these activated orbital fibroblasts will be releasing chemokines. What are the chemokines? It could be tumor necrosis factors, interleukins, and also the T lymphocytes will be released. And the T lymphocytes will be deposited in the orbit and they interact with the fibroblasts. And these two also interact one among each other and they release the deposition of macromolecules, extracellular macromolecules. What are these macromolecules? They are the glycosaminoglycans. And these glycosaminoglycans have this hyaluronic acid and they are deposited and they also cause fibroblastic proliferation. So what is happening with this glycosaminoglycans or this hyaluronic acid is that because of the hyperosmotic gradient, they imbibe the water and they become edematous and they are deposited in the muscles and the muscle swells. And that is the pathogenesis. And there is also adipogenesis and the expanded orbital muscles and the orbital tissue causes engorgement in the orbital cavity, pushing the eye forward and all the inflammatory changes. So this is it. Like we have this autoantibody, we have the anti-TSH receptors, anti-insulin-like growth factor 1 receptor. This is an important receptor and it binds and they bind in the antibodies binds in the orbital fibroblasts. Then activation happens. Activation releases the chemokines and interleukins and other lymphocytic proliferations will be happening and it will be attracting T lymphocytes. This T lymphocytes then releases all this interleukin and all the mediators of inflammation And in the muscle, it produces this PPAR gamma, and B lymphocytes are also produced, and they accumulate in the muscle. Okay, and that leads on to the proliferation of the orbital muscles and also deposition of the adipose tissue, and happens everything. So the elevated levels of insulin-like growth factor 1 receptor is found in the orbital fibroblasts, T cells and B cells of patients with thyroid-associated orbitopathy. They may play a role in the promotion of T cell recruitment and the presence of circulating activating autoantibodies. This recruitment of T cell is what is the culprit. And therefore, the newest medication, teprotumumab, is very effective against this. And it is also very expensive, may not be available in all the countries. And this drug, the latest drug, is targeting this site, insulin-like growth factor 1 receptor. So that is the most latest. And it is very effective and it is very good and relieves all the symptoms and the troubles of the patients. Okay, so now the ocular manifestations of TEO, you all know this. It causes eyelid retraction and proptosis, chemosis, periorbital edema, and altered ocular motility with significant functional, social, and cosmetic consequences. Of the affected patients, 20% indicate that ocular morbidity of this condition is more troublesome than the systemic complications of dysthyroidism. They have this lateral flare. Not only the lid retraction, they also have the lateral flare. That is said to be because of the deposition of these T cells and also all these glycosaminoglycans in the lacrimal gland, and it is between the levator palpebrae aponeurosis and the lacrimal gland, and that widens the space, and there is a lateral flare in these patients. Okay, and the other features will be because of all the protrusion and the inflammation that is happening in the orbit, there will be lag of Tholmus, and the inflammation will cause a medial caruncular congestion, and there will be chemosis and proptosis, and patients will have a superior limbic keratoconjunctivitis, proptosis, and because of the lag of Tholmus, they will have exposure keratopathy, and this fluid and accumulation will choke the optic nerve, and it will cause compressive optic neuropathy, which is called as dysthyroid optic neuropathy, DON. Okay, so then now we have to classify this thyroid-associated orbitopathy. There are varied classifications. I will just tell, and finally I will also tell which is the most important, and that is the classification that is followed. The simpler classification is type 1 and type 2. What is type 1? It is characterized by minimal inflammation and restrictive myopathy. What is type 2? It is characterized by significant orbital inflammation and restrictive myopathy. Okay, that is one classification. Then there is another classification called as no specs. That is a mnemonic. It is by the Werner classification. It is one of the most commonly known, and it is used in many endocrine studies, but it has its own weaknesses, and it may, we don't use it that much because it doesn't give that much of prognostic value. So what is this no specs? No means there is no upper eyelid retraction, no lid lag or proptosis, and there are grades, and it classifies the severity and rank order of various clinical features. What is the specs? S stands for soft tissue involvement with the symptoms. What are they? Excess lacrimation, sandy sensation, retrobulbar discomfort, photophobia, no diplopia. P stands for proptosis. E stands for extraocular muscle involvement, often with diplopia. C stands for corneal involvement, due mainly to lag of Tholmus. And the last S stands for sight loss due to optic nerve involvement. Okay, this is that. It ranges from 0 to 6. No specs classification. Class 0 is no signs and symptoms. Class 1 is only signs. Class 2, soft tissue involvement. Class 3, proptosis. Class 4, extraocular muscle involvement. Class 5, corneal involvement. Class 6, sight loss and optic neuropathy. Okay. Then there are other two classifications, UGOGO and VISA. You must know about what this UGOGO. UGOGO is by the European group classification. And VISA is followed in North American classification. What is this VISA? V stands for vision-related problems. I is inflammation. S is for strabismus. A is for appearance. So this UGOGO classification, you have 3 grades. You have sight-threatening Graves' orbitopathy, moderate to severe Graves' orbitopathy, and mild Graves' orbitopathy. In sight-threatening, patients with dysthyroid optic neuropathy, DON, and/or corneal breakdown, this category warrants immediate intervention. It will help us in deciding the management of these patients. Okay, so it requires immediate intervention. Moderate to severe Graves' orbitopathy, patients without sight-threatening Graves' orbitopathy whose eye disease has sufficient impact on daily life to justify the risks of immunosuppression if active. If it is active, you have to give immunosuppression or surgical intervention if inactive. Patients with moderate to severe Graves' orbitopathy usually have any one or more of the following. They will have lid retraction of more than 2 millimeters, moderate to severe soft tissue involvement, exophthalmos of more than 3 millimeters, above normal for race and gender. It will be inconstant or constant diplopia. In mild Graves' orbitopathy, everything will be mild, like the lid retraction will be less than 2 millimeters, exophthalmos will be less than 3 millimeters, and there'll be transient or no diplopia, and there'll be no exposure, corneal exposure. And they are, you don't have to give immunosuppressives, okay? And they can be treated with just only lubricants. Now, this visa classification is important. It really is very helpful. It helps to direct appropriate management for patients with Graves' orbitopathy. And this chart is very good. It is very explanatory. And see orbitopathy time and all that. So vision, you have to check the color vision, the fundus, and the progress in both the right eye and the left eye. Everything, the optic nerve, whether there is edema is present, pallor is present, color vision is present or not, and there are grading in all these. And eye inflammation, whether there is a retrobulbar ache, whether that ache is present at rest or with gaze, whether there is lid swelling, and whether there is progression and all that, and whether there is chemosis, conjunctival injection, lid injection, and lid edema, all that, presence or absence, and there is a grading. And finally, and also strabismus, also ocular motility, you check the diplopia, whether it is present or not, it is 0, and it is with gaze 1, and if it is intermittent 2, and if it is constant, it is graded as 3, and head turn is present or progress, and adductions and refractions, everything also for the right eye and the left eye, it is recorded. And the appearance, whether there is lid retraction, yes or no, whether there is proptosis, there is tearing and foreign body sensation, and there is grading for both the right and the left eye. And, it is graded like this. 0 to 8, inflammation is 0 to 8, and strabismus is 0 to 3, and appearance is also 0 to 3. Okay. So there is also clinical activity score. For initial clinical activity score, it is 1 to 7. So what is that 1 to 7? 1 is spontaneous orbital pain. 2 will be gaze-evoked orbital pain. 3 is eyelid swelling that is considered to be due to active GO. Eyelid erythema, conjunctival redness considered due to active Graves' orbitopathy. Chemosis, inflammation of caruncle or plica. It is graded from 1 to 7. Follow-up also after 1 to 3 months, the score is 8 to 10. Increase of more than 2 millimeter proptosis. 9 will be decrease in uniocular excursion in any one direction of more than 8 degrees. 10 will be decrease of acuity equivalent to 1 Snellen chart. So 1 point is given for the presence of each of the parameters assessed. The sum of all the points define clinical activity. Active ophthalmopathy, if a score is more than 3 by 7, you just remember this. Active ophthalmopathy, if the score is more than 3 by 7 at first examination, or if it is more than 4 by 10 in successive examinations, there is Graves' orbitopathy. Okay, then these two classification, it determines the disease activity. Clinical activity score greater than 3 by 7 on initial presentation or 4 by 10 on follow-up suggest active disease that might benefit from immunosuppression. Visa inflammation scores less than 4 by 10 are managed conservatively. So having classified, there are, for the completion's sake, I'm just adding the laboratory investigations because there's a thyroid that is involved. We have to do all the thyroid profile, serum T3, T4 resin uptake, T3 and T3 resin uptake, T4 total and free, TSH immunoradiometric assay, TSH levels, immunoglobulin levels. And we have to do the B scan and A scan. B scan will typically show only enlargement of the muscle belly, sparing the tendons. The tendons will not be enlarged. In the B scan, you can see there's no, the tendon is normal, but the muscle is enlarged, the medial rectus muscle. And when you do the A scan, there will be medium to high internal reflectivity of the external ocular muscles. And CT is more useful than MRI in patients with thyroid orbitopathy because you have to take, as Madam said, Usha Ma'am said, you have to take the axial, coronal, and sagittal views. Axial view will show enlarged muscle bellies. Coronal view will show enlargement of the multiple muscles within the orbit. So we know our orbit is pear-shaped, and the muscles and everything is crowded at the apex with all the swelling of the muscles, and because of the glycosaminoglycans, it'll compress the optic nerve, and therefore, and that is the reason for the proptosis, chemosis, and also dysthyroid optic neuropathy. Okay. And my talk ends with this. Thank you all for patient hearing. The other management will be talked by my friend, Dr. Kalechelvi. Thank you.